The story starts with my parents. My father got sick. We were living in Seattle, Washington at the time, and it found out that he had a HIV-positive test. And my mom was 6 months pregnant with me at the time, and luckily the provider asked my mother to get tested as well, which wasn't common. A lot of doctors didn't believe that women got HIV. So she took the test, and she found out she was HIV positive as well. So they both started treatment, but she wasn't adherent to her treatment, so she didn't take it every day as prescribed. So unfortunately, I was ended up being born with HIV. I did start treatment right away when I was born, and after a few years, the virus was still there. Around 1994, 1995, my mom died of AIDS-related complications, and my brother, who was a year younger than me, who was also born with HIV, died of AIDS-related complications. So when that happened, myself and my youngest brother, we were removed from my father's house because he was in a very troubling situation, and they placed us in a foster home when I was 4 going on 5, and I stayed there until I was 9. And then when I was 9, I was adopted from that foster mom, and we moved to a small town called Port Townsend. I was told I was HIV positive when I was about 7. I don't think I was super surprised. They kind of told me about what was going on in my body, what was expected. So I kind of had to learn how to deal with being HIV positive pretty fast. I went through a lot of different stages of grief and mourning and all sorts of experiences, trying to figure out where I belonged for a long time, and trying to blend in with everyone else when it didn't really work that way. My mom made sure I had a really normal life. She wanted to make sure I was in sports and I did all the things I wanted to do, and so I had a pretty great, life growing up. I expressed a lot of my anger and frustrations through art for many years, and that's kind of how I coped with my diagnosis for a long time. The first time I told someone, I was in 4th grade. We were doing our sexual health class, so we were talking about HIV. We were watching a movie, and I was just having flashbacks about my mom, and no one knew, so it was this secret for so long. And so I stormed out of the class, and one of my closest friends that I connected with that year, she followed me, and she asked me what's going on? Are you okay? And I don't know exactly the words I said, but I told her I'm living HIV. My mom died from this, and I just was feeling really upset about it. And so she just gave me a hug, and she's like, well, call me anytime, because back then we called each other. And then eventually I told kind of my friend circle. One of those friends of mine during that time, it was middle school, and she found out from one of my other friends. She came to me and was like, you didn't tell me. She was more upset that I didn't tell her first, more than actual HIV. And then naturally she told her guardian, and that guardian decided that we should not be friends anymore. And so that was the first time I experienced discrimination, was from an adult. Luckily, this parent, guardian of my friend, she apologized to me and said that she was just, first thing that people hear or do when they hear HIV is that I have to protect someone. And she said that she just didn't know how it all worked, and she apologized, and we went on, with our, child lives after that. So I had my first boyfriend when I was in, I think, 7th grade. I don't remember if I told him or if my mom told him or if his mom told him, but he found out, and we talked about it, however kids talk about these things, and he was completely okay with it. It was great. It was awesome. I didn't have to hide that part about me. He was cool with it. And, as far as we did, we just held hands and kissed. So it wasn't a huge deal. But I had my more serious partner when I was in sophomore or junior year of high school. And then we slowly became sexually active, but we were really prepared, and, we used protection and all that kind of stuff. But we only had sex one time. And so, yeah. When I graduated high school, I moved out of my mom's house for the first time. I went to Bellingham, the first city that I lived in. I was really terrified. I didn't really realize that, I had to now take care of myself. I had to go to doctors and schedule that. I had to make sure I got my meds. I had to get case managers, which I had no clue what a case manager was at that time. And so that was a struggle. And no one really told me that it was going to be like that. That transition between adolescent to adult is still one of the top issues. Number one reason why a lot of young people stop taking treatment and why they die of AIDS-related complications till this day. Luckily, I did have support systems. I had a godmom who I reached out to and told her that I stopped taking my treatment. I was kind of going back and forth, taking it and not taking it for about a year, which I found out later on was not good because that can build resistance. And she did some research for me, and she found Babes Network YWCA, which again is a program in Seattle, Washington for women and their families. I went to go see a peer advocate at that time, and I've been connected with them ever since. This was in 2010. It wasn't until I started working at Babes Network 4 years ago that I disclosed my status and I shared my story in our state capital of Olympia. I was invited to speak, and it was before this AIDS Action and Awareness Day that we had. I cried a little bit and got really emotional, and I was really nervous, but I did it, and the response to it was so rewarding, and it was really positive, and everyone was just smiling and crying, and I was like, okay. I was like, that was good, and it was actually kind of, I think, started my healing process. It was like it broke down a lot of stuff that I was holding for so long, and I realized that at that moment that I was not alone. We all had that one commonality, and that was HIV, and that's all that mattered. I was already a babe for a few years. There was a job opening, and the program manager, she reached out to me and hey, there's an opening coming up, and I don't know, this might be a really good fit for you. So I was like, okay, I'll apply. I didn't really think much of it. I got an interview, and I got the job. And then, once I was at that desk, and I was it was real, I was like, oh my God, this is my dream job. I was putting myself in a position that I kind of always wanted to be in, but I was always afraid of kind of being in that leadership position. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it just kind of, all this stuff kind of placed, and I loved it. So what I want people to know about women and HIV is that we can live amazing, productive, dignified lives. And that it's just one part of us. I have many different identities. I'm Black, I'm queer, I'm a young woman. And so a lot of those things come up a lot more in my life than HIV.